Welcome to Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast with Colin McDougall and Richard Zokol.
Hey, welcome to Tough Lies, the podcast. So glad to be with you. My name's Colin McDougall. I'm here with my wonderful partner in golfing crime, Richard Zokol. How are you?
I am well, Colin. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful to see more of you now that you moved from Ontario to the Okanagan, and we can spend a little time together, and then which led to us kind of coming together and creating this podcast. I'm very excited about it. I think the purpose is to build a community and share some stories and hopefully help some people with their mental health as it relates to this crazy game of golf.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun. I think for those who are interested and want to know what we're about, I think we're gonna have some predefined segments which we'll get into. We are going to, I think, bring something new to the game, which is that's much needed. We're going to try to bring some high-level discourse, some critical discussion. We're not going to shy away from tougher subjects around the game, but we're going to try to do it in a constructive way.
Right.
And because we both love the game, but we both agree that it's better game when tough discussions and let's say tough lies are put out there for fodder. So
love it.
Without further ado, let's get into our first segment of the show. A little thing like we like to call the good, the bad, and the ugly. So Richard, why don't you start off?
Okay, from a very high level of the good, the bad, and the ugly, my good is Rory McIlroy achieving his career Grand Slam, and there's lots to unpack in how he almost didn't win the Masters this year. That's fascinating unto itself. Also, what's interesting is that could be as well as in the good is Scotty Scheffler's year. He's the player of the year of the PGA Tour for 4 years in a row. So only Tiger has done that. So that's interesting. And I guess the interesting thing about it is I don't even want to talk about it because it's kind of like it's not great news. The great news that I do want to talk about, and I think it's part of the good, is A.J. Ewart's win on the PGA Tour qualifying score.
Yeah, how good is that?
In the manner in which he did it, I was shocked. And I know A.J.'s father, Brad. He for many years been in the industry, but wow, did A.J. look like a seasoned veteran in his victory on the qualifying score? So we can chat about that. Yeah. So the bad. The Ryder Cup, more so pointing the fingers at the PGA of America, and the ugly, unfortunately, that's Colin Morikawa that we can dive into. So that's my high level, and give me your thoughts there, Colin.
Yeah, well, I would say if I was going to talk about the good, I would say hard to deny Brooke Henderson winning on home ice. Mm-hmm. Pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. Here in Canada, a really spectacular win. Aphrodite Dang in the same tournament, 14 years old. How bright a future does she have? And I just think, I tend to agree with you. I would say one of the real goods was, I think the Masters that Rory won was the single most riveting golf tournament that there has ever been.
I think you're right. That's interesting you say that, but bang on.
But from a not just that he won, but the way and it was just such an engrossing tournament finish, roller coaster, everything. It had everything, and obviously a wonderful finale there. So that was good. And then I would say on the bad, I would say I think the bad was the Keegan Bradley selection as captain. I think that was a huge miss for a variety of reasons, and I think that put them in a very difficult position, the U.S. side, and so we can talk about that. And the other bad, I would say, was the setup at Bethpage. I also think was just a mess. I think my thought on the tournament that was the Ryder Cup was they turned Bethpage, a U.S. Open level course, into a John Deere,
a typical tour event.
Yeah, where 27 under wins it, and I don't think that's what the fans really wanted to see. And then I think we were both in agreement that the fan behavior at the Ryder Cup was a really ugly part of the year. So maybe we could spend a couple minutes going in a bit deeper dive on that part of it. What were your thoughts on the behavior we saw at the Ryder Cup, and maybe what it says about the game these days? I'm just curious, where you come at it, because I think we're all kind of embarrassed as stewards of the game to see what we saw there.
Yeah, I think so. I think golf has gotten into, at the highest level, in the past few years, when PIF came into the game and raised the stakes and the ante up, and then there was pushback from the PGA Tour to not do that. At the start of 2025, the stability of the PGA Tour wasn't stable, and they're dealing with how are they going to bring in and compete with the money that PIF is putting into it. PIF wanted to invest $1.5 billion into the tour, so the PGA Tour was in shaky ground, and then with the PGA coming into it, the last Ryder Cup in Rome, and then it's coming into New York. Unfortunately, the PGA of America should have gotten in front of this. That that when you go into New York, you go into the cauldron of the devil, so to speak, as far as fans go, and they want to engage, and they want to pick a fight, and they want to get ugly, because that's the small percentage that want to mix things up. That's what they live for. So unfortunately, the PGA of America did not get in front of it. There needed to be a lot of force or security, guards in play that would take those guys out and turf them out. So it's really unfortunate. The game is growing and greed is getting into it, and it's unfortunate. Whatever happened to the concession when Jack Nicklaus gave that putt to Tony Jacklin? The Ryder Cup went into a real poor path, and I'm of the opinion that they're going to stop this thing when they get to Ireland next go round.
Yeah, I agree. It's what was her name? Was it Heather? I'm trying to remember the name of the woman. McMahon, the
comedian,
leading a chant with the fans that was completely offside as it pertained to the decorum of the game, let alone for the Ryder Cup Europe participants. I mean, that to me is one thing when you see it in the fans, but it's propagated by the leadership or their envoys at the tournament. I mean, holy moly, it just felt like way too far.
Yes, and I think that I will point the finger at the PGA of America for why would you want to bring in a comedian on the first tee? Bring in, if you want to do something that can encourage the American side, which I agree they should, bring in Tom Watson, bring in, Lee Trevino to support the American team. But when she started in the microphone after the chant started going, where there were, what was it? F you, Rory, F you, Rory. This is insanity. Like, the PGA of America is responsible for that, and I don't think they moved quick enough to even stop it.
Yeah, Richard, you were talking about something interesting when you were talking about Keegan and the way he kicked off.
Oh yeah,
the Ryder Cup, and how it's well, maybe you tell it yourself.
Yeah, well, again, my finger's going straight at the PGA of America. I think they should have told Keegan to play and not captain. Keegan is a very high intense guy, and he's a fighter. And I think his intensity is not going to serve his teams well, because it flows down to your players from the leader and anxiety. Right. And then what Keegan did, and as respectful as I can be, he brought in the lieutenant of the New York Fire Department. Can't remember his last name, but he unfortunately his father, Joe, was one of 342 firefighters that ran into the collapsing buildings at the tower at 9/11, and they died, which was just horrible. And he was there to, I guess, motivate. I'm not sure, but I'm of the opinion that he had these guys up at 7 o'clock in the morning on Monday. He brought them to the first tee, and Chris Maselli, I think his name is. He told the story, and it's a very inspiring story, no doubt. And then at the end of it, he said, "You guys are representing, America, and you have to play to win." And I just felt it was, an effort to jack these guys up. And let me tell you, if you're a Ryder Cup player, you don't need to be jacked up. It's baked in with the position. Scotty Scheffler does not need any motivation. He doesn't need it. He needs to be calmed down and clear the way so they can get to the first tee as fast as they can. Yeah. So it was unfortunate.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I just couldn't imagine that being a net positive.
Right.
There's enough pressure playing in an event like that. And yes, those guys are used to it, and they, often are really good at embracing that pressure. But I don't see that there was any point in really adding on to it.
I think Ryder Cup pressure just folds over that of a major, and that which in a major is a lot higher than winning a PGA Tour event. And this ratchets up every time you have, you're playing with your partners and your country. You don't want to let them down. And so it is. That's what I mean. It's baked in there, and so they need to just be calmed down. And the other thing that Keegan did, which didn't square properly with me, is he had his St. John's golf team roommate talk to the team about how he used to sleep in the car so they could get a tee time at Bethpage, which a lot of people do. I just failed to connect how that's going to work in the American team's favor.
Last thought on Keegan, I would share is I didn't see what the point was to rush him into that role when he could obviously play well enough to be on the team.
Right.
I just don't see there's a lot of really wonderful potential U.S. captains and a lot of potentially successful captains from years past they could bring back, perhaps. And in this case, I just think, why would you put yourself in a position where you could have what they had, which was the will he, won't he, for 4 months leading up? Then he makes, I think, what he felt was obviously he felt it was the right decision, but a really challenging one for a high-level competitor like he clearly is. And I just thought it was a distraction all the way along, and they paid a price for it.
Yeah, no question about it. So, I don't think, why do the Americans need to bring in a new captain every year? If you got a good captain, don't you want to ride that wave like Luke Donald did in Rome? I mean, he was the same.
You don't fire the winning coach.
Exactly. Right? Build on it, and not just like, it's not everyone's turn to be the captain of the Ryder Cup team. You pick the team that's going to win and the captain that's going to be able to get the job done, and you beat him like a rented mule, and then you throw away and bring in the new captain. That's how it's supposed to work.
Hey, listen! Congratulations, Ben Crenshaw, on winning the Ryder Cup. You're fired.
Yeah, if you could bring back Ben Hogan, because what he said, there's a great story about Ben Hogan with the Ryder Cup. He just looked at the boys in his hawk glare and said, "Boys, you know what to do." It says, "I don't want to be on this as the losing captain." So that he put the fear of God in those players. And another thing is the American team. Let me just add this one thing. We can move on. Is that the American team has no problem with their chemistry and their performance in the President's Cup. But the Ryder Cup, they certainly do. It's in their heads, and I think the psych ops of the European team, when they talk about putting in, higher number of thread count on their sheets and better smelling shampoo, so to do everything they can, is just getting into the Americans' psyche and driving them nuts.
Well, I looking back on my game from this year, I can tell you, Richard, I kept close track on my shampoo use, and there's a strong correlation between me playing well and not knowing what shampoo I used.
There you go.
But and I guess one last bit on the ugly. I do want to spend a little bit of time unpacking the ugly that was the fan behavior. Mm-hmm. I have a thought that, I don't think it's been brought up by anybody else, so I thought I'd bring it up here, and that is as I was watching the tournament, seeing this really awful behavior that is, there are there drunk idiots at the tournament in Phoenix? For sure. Are there, at scale? Yes. Are there other tournaments where they have, that sort of potential thing, but none where they're literally trying to affect the outcome?
Right.
I think deliberately like it was the Ryder Cup, shouting things, trying to mess with people's timing, anything they could do to distract and cause a poor shot by a European player. And one of the things that struck me is, I have spent a lot of time in my background. I used to live in Las Vegas, and I'm not much of a gambler myself, but there has been an explosion in sports wagering.
Yes.
And one of the things that I wondered as I was watching was how many of these people who are making these comments actually have money on the outcome. It's a very unusual situation where you can get so close to the action as to affect
feet away. Yes.
Yeah, literally feet away, and you can say something, do something
in the backswing
designed, that could potentially reward you financially to a huge extent. And I just think it seemed like this year's Ryder Cup was just so much different in terms of the level of poor behavior. I was looking for answers, and I just thought, well, I don't know that this is. It may be that wasn't the case, but
it's going to happen.
The amount of young people, the stats on young people gambling serious money that they don't have is staggering. Yeah. And I just thought, well, and when you have a lot of money on it, you might do some and say some things that you wouldn't normally,
That's been talked about, but the PGA Tour is doing a 180 on this. Back in my day, I mentioned that we weren't even allowed to play cards in the locker room because the media were walking through and they didn't want the perception that we were playing poker or gambling. So this 180, like all of a sudden, with gambling, with the money, with coming into the Hell's Den in New York, with the people wanting to participate into the outcome, these are not good things for the game of golf. That's for sure. And again, the PGA of America is going to have to, and Europe as well, because they own half the Ryder Cup. They're going to get ahead of this thing in Ireland in 2 years from now.
Yeah, and I would say the complicity of most pro sports, including the PGA Tour. Like you go to the PGA Tour's leaderboard, there's a rolling set of odds on who's going to win as every shot is played.
Yes.
So they're in it. They're in it.
They're in it right now. Yep.
So they can't step back and say, well, it's just, they've contributed to where we are, I would say.
Today's episode of Tough Lies is brought to you by Fairway Foresight, the AI-powered digital caddy, yardage, and strategy app for golfers who want to stop making the same mistake every single round. Fairway Foresight doesn't just give you a number, it analyzes your patterns, your shot tendencies, their dispersion, and decision making. And then it shows you what you should do, not what you wish would happen. If you ever thought, I probably shouldn't hit driver here, and hey, who hasn't? But I'm going to hit driver anyways, this app is the one for you.
I wanted to spend some time in a segment we're going to call the Tough Topic of the Week. The Tough Topic of the Week, I think, should be around the PGA Tour and how players handle the media. I think you mentioned Colin Morikawa earlier. I think it's worth a deep dive. So let's talk about it. So why don't we let you set it up in terms of refreshing people's memory on Morikawa's behavior around Bay Hill and what followed, and then let's tackle some questions.
Yeah. So my ugly, and it was really ugly in my opinion, obviously, was Colin Morikawa's antics in 2025 earlier this year. At the Arnold Palmer Invitational, Bay Hill Golf Club. And on the Sunday round, coming down the last hole, Colin Morikawa had a couple shot lead, and on the 16th hole, Russell Henley chipped in for eagle and flipped the script on Colin. And it was very exciting. And this stuff happens in golf all the time. It was very exciting. And happens in life. And after the round was over, Colin, he had a request for media interview, and he blew them off. He walked right away, and just never gave them any answer. And that wasn't the big problem unto itself, because I did learn that you're not obligated to speak to the media. I think they need to be obligated, to speak to the media in a case where someone's running hot, like Colin was because he didn't win. Give him a half an hour to cool down, and then address the media. But I don't like that. But so he did not. And then 2 days later, on the press conference at the Players' Championship on the Tuesday, Colin's up there asking questions, and a media guy asked him why he didn't engage with the media after the media request. He goes, "Just pissed. I was heated." And he goes, "I don't owe anyone anything. No offense to you guys." And that just knocked my socks off. I couldn't believe what he said. Of course he owes everything. He owes the PGA Tour. He owes the sponsors of the PGA Tour. And, and a month earlier, there was a letter sent out to all the players by Justin Thomas about how they have to do everything. The tour wasn't stable earlier on that year, and there was some threatening. PIF was threatening to get involved with the PGA Tour, and so the players were trying to figure out that they have to encourage all their players to do the best they can, to engage with the media, because this is the conduit to those who invest in the PGA Tour that allow these guys to make that money. And then up until that week, Colin Morikawa was making on average, $1.23 million per week. And so, this platform that was created by all the pros prior to him, and, and he snubbed the tour, he snubbed the media, and then he comes back on Friday after shooting 65 to go into fourth place on the second round. And no one said anything. No one in the media said anything. And then after he says, "Oh, by the way, one last thing." He decided to start digging again, which was just crazy. He goes, I just want to say a few things to the Brandel Chamblees and the Rocco media, to the people that gave him some criticism, that I still don't care. So he doubles down on this, and then the next day he goes out, shoots 77, and then played poorly for the rest of the year. So I think the karma caught up with him. But that was really an ugly, ugly situation. And I hope he learns and grows and matures into the situation where he can, make better decisions moving forward.
Yeah, I was not attuned to that when it happened, but I certainly, what I would say is my prevailing thought as pertains to media and the PGA Tours, there was a precipitous decline, and now we're at almost zero, I would say, when it comes to real, honest journalism. I mean, name me the last time the PGA Tour commissioner has been asked really tough questions and had to really own it.
Yeah.
And let alone the players, I would say. And I think, and let alone the Masters, you can go down the line. I think most journalists will say whatever the Masters wants them to say because they want to be able to play there on the Monday. They want to win that lottery and play the course on the Monday, right? Yeah. And I think, which I think is very clever, I would say, by the way, by the Masters to do that, because it gets them
what they want.
Answer what they want. They don't want to really answer the tough questions.
Well, do you remember? I think it was 1968. Jack Whitaker. Jack Whitaker, one of the most eloquent media people in the world.
Sure.
Just fantastic. Yeah. He called the gallery come down the 18th hole a mob, and the chairman booted him out. He said he can't. He's not on our telecast. In the exact same way, my good friend
McCord.
Gary McCord talked about bikini waxing the green. So unfortunately, we got a lot to talk about when it comes to Augusta down the road, because I don't like the whole business of a private club having the power of a significant organization like the USGA or the PGA of America. Not a private, club that that has a huge history of deep bigotry.
Yeah.
Clifford Roberts back in those days just was the biggest bigot there was. And so those things need to, and now they've evolved over it. But I think you're right. A lot of the golfing media people didn't want to, they don't want to cross a line and get their credentials clipped.
Yeah. So, part of this segment to me, and I love having dialogue like this, whether we're doing it on a podcast or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
But I always, I'm also a teacher, and I would always tell my students, it's don't complain unless you got a solution. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Richard, and say, well, what are some constructive things that we could do or we could see out of the PGA Tour and the players that would make this better?
Well, I think number one is as it relates to Colin Morikawa, what he did. I think we got to change the bylaws of the tour, saying that every member of the PGA Tour needs to is obligated to speak to the media, and if you need a 30-minute buffer to cool down, then take it. But I think that when you were Arnold Palmer in that era of pros, and when they, he said being tough and being responsible is doing those things that you don't want to do just because it's being a professional and having humility. And Scotty Scheffler, he's not a talkative guy, but he's a guy who's proud of his profession, and he would never say something as ugly as what Colin said it there. I mean, those antics are of a petulant adolescent, and be a professional and be responsible.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think the game's mostly undefeated when it comes to humility, right? Like the game will always even things out. Like you said, there's karma towards the second half of the season, and I just feel like I think the idea of shrinking, hiding, running away, avoiding accountability when you're an athlete at that level is not net good for performance or for you or your brand, quote unquote, either. And I think we would respect Morikawa and others who've behaved similarly a lot more if they just owned it. Like this just in, there's 20, you're going to play in 30 events this year. You're going to win maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 if you're really, really lucky. The rest of the time, it's failure. Yeah. And I think he'd probably be a much healthier space if he just took time to really own what happened. And Russell Henley played brilliantly to win that. And that's okay.
Yeah, that happens. That's golf. That's part of the entertainment factor. And I think the next thing is transparency. Like, I don't like the PGA Tour when someone gets fined that they don't tell the media. I think if you get fined,
oh my goodness,
I think they should say, so and so got fined this price. So it's about disclosure. Be honest. Let's put it right on the table. I think because the fans would like it.
Let's circle back to the broader subject of the media as it pertains to golf coverage and constructive ways to sort of tackle it. I believe that it's incumbent on the tour, as you said, to be at the forefront. Like, you should be leading by example. The commissioner should be there out front taking tough questions. I think we would all accept that what happened, for example, with Liv and all that unfolded was shocking to say the least. Nobody thought there would anybody would come out and come up with a competitive offering to the PGA Tour. It was a monopoly, basically, right? But it did, and he had to deal with it, and it wasn't easy, But I felt the whole way along that they weren't being upfront. I certainly felt sorry for the Canadian Open 2 years in a row, having those announcements made on those weeks, and the great sponsors that RBC are. I just would like to see a strong. I don't know how to put it. I get really wound up in the subject, but I feel like real journalism writ large has lost its way, and it's even more so in professional golf. And it's okay to be criticized. It's okay, we should all have thicker skins. I think, when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah,
How do you feel?
and the new PGA Tour, the track that it's on is unbelievable. Rumor has it, as they say, so there's no more commissioner. Jay Monahan's going to be gone at the end of this year.
Yeah.
The new CEO of the PGA Tour, that's a for-profit company, is Brian Rolap. And as you know, he comes from the NFL. He was the number 2 guy at NFL. He negotiated all their TV contracts and all their marketing stuff, and he's coming in and he's shrinking the PGA Tour down. So you notice that the exempt line went from 125 to 120, and so that's interesting. And so what rumor has it, and Gary McCord, who was the leader in structuring the all exempt tour in 1982 to the top 125, he's been talking. I think he's making a lot of sense that like the NFL and NBA and hockey, that this is a franchise. Their ownership of each individual team. Brian Rolap in there, I think, is moving, in the direction to franchise the PGA Tour events. So can you imagine putting an evaluation on the Phoenix Open, the Waste Management Phoenix Open? What is that going to be worth? And this, Colin, this is how they're going to be able to give a return on investment to the Strategic Sports Group, who's invested $1.5 billion. This is how the only way they could get, and the Strategic Sports Group has got another $1.5 billion in the chamber, ready to fire to the PGA Tour when that comes up. So fascinating stuff ahead.
I don't know about you, Richard, but it sounds to me like we're going to have some fun stuff to talk about when 2026 rolls around. So
that's exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah. So wrapping up our view, I think we would love to see more accountability and certainly better behavior out of the stars,
disclosure,
and respect to the fans. Some more honesty, some more disclosure, no question. I do want to spend some time, for those listeners who don't know, and they should if they're into golf at all. But Richard is one of the leaders, or one of the true pioneers when it comes to the mental side of the game of golf. So I can't resist but want to have sort of what I've called a segment, the Mind Track mental moment. So, and let's do it for the year. Like, is there a moment from this year, from a mental toughness standpoint, or the mental aspect of the game, that you recall that was just like a really signature moment?
One of the things that I like to point out to people, to talk about those who have control of their minds, and we've created a system at MindTrack that trains the coaches and players to learn how to be in the present moment. And the problem with most golfers is we've never been given the opportunity to learn how to think properly. So we default to the result. And whether we know it or not, it's just a horrible thing that causes a lot of people a lot of problems with anxiety, and I think it's projecting what other people may think of them, and they want the results so bad, and the harder you push, the worse it gets. And the best way I
think you've been talking to my therapist.
Well, it happens to every golfer. Like, I lived this on the PGA Tour. But the thing where I think it really makes the most sense is you got these two guys. The two best players in the world. One is Rory McIlroy. One is Scotty Scheffler. One has a real problem with dealing with and has had a problem with trying to win the Grand Slam. He hasn't been able to win a major championship for 14 years. And Scotty Scheffler is just cruising along. He inherently, I think he's an anomaly. He's an outlier. I think his ecosystem, his family have brought him up to not think his personal identity. He doesn't become a better person because he wins golf tournaments. He's the same person. He doesn't celebrate winning like other people. Yet then when we see Rory McIlroy go through this emotional roller coaster, like as you said earlier, we lived that with him. He shot 66 in the second round at the Masters, 66 in the third round. He's got the lead. He double bogeys the first hole, loses the lead. We go, here we go again. We're living every minute with this guy and hoping he's going to be able to get to that, breakthrough and win. Then he has these problems. He gets the lead again with great birdies on 3 and 4. And then he dumps this just easy shot into Rays Creek on 13, makes another double bogey, bogeys 14. And then you're going, oh, not again. This is this golf insanity.
We've seen this,
compounding like interest in your bank. Then this remarkable shot on 15, 17, 18, that tee shot on the 18th hole. He's got 125 yards. Dumps it in the bunker, makes bogey, and we go, here we go again. So this is just another example of even the best players in the world struggle with their thoughts. Like Rory McIlroy lost. He gave away the 2002 Open at St. Andrews. He gave the U.S. Open away in Los Angeles and gave another U.S. Open away in Pinehurst. So he's still not out of the woods. But anyway, I'm sorry that took a long time, but we're going to have a lot of fun talking about the mental side of and the emotional side of golf that we all need to get better at.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to it because I think it's, it's certainly an aspect that people are familiar with and they talk about, but I think you just bring so much rich experience to that discourse, and I can't wait to sort of unpack it in 2026 with you. I'm going to have a million questions. By that time, we're going to be taking questions from our listeners. It's going to be great. So, wrapping up, I did want to maybe have a look ahead and sort of say, what should we be looking forward to in golf in 2026? Like what's on the horizon in your mind, Richard?
Well, I think we get to watch and look in the soul of Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy. Now that that type of thing. It seems to me every Sunday final round of a PGA Tour event, there's a wonderful story. Someone did this, something to win. The other person did that to lose. Those are experiences. It just seems like every weekend is an infomercial for Mind Track Golf, and it's still this massive void out here that the golf industry, in my opinion, we can talk about the successes that we've shown, and we'll be able to bring in some people and verify these situations and get the people on the right track.
Yeah. I think we're going to have some great discussions. I mean, in terms of, for me, what I'm looking for next year, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're going to be at the largest number of Canadians exempt on tour. Probably 7, I think it is.
Yeah, we'll have to count that. It's a growing number.
So,
Golf Canada is doing a good job, and the effort.
Full credit to them.
I think also too is that what's producing these players today is that wonderful Canadian Mike Weir. Him being able to win that Masters, and then now we're gone through a stage of few players, and now the AJ Eathorn, Ben Silverman, and Adam Svensson got his card back, which was very impressive play as well. So we're the belief system of the Canadians on the PGA Tour and professional golf is growing at a very rapid rate.
Yeah. And I'm sure AJ Ewart won't mind that you said AJ Eathorn.
Did I say AJ?
That's okay.
AJ Eathorn. Okay. I love her to death on the LPGA.
She's here. She's in our kit. Yeah.
She is. AJ Ewart. Sorry, and apologies. Sorry.
No, it's all good. So I'm obviously looking forward to that. I would obviously, I think next year is going to be another bigger year for Brooke Henderson. And then I would, I'm going to, as host of one of the hosts of the show, co-host of the show, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to toot your horn, because I think most people aren't aware. You, Mr. Zokol, are coming out with a book next year.
I am.
And what's the name of the book is?
The book is called Zokology. Change your perspective, not your swing. And again, it leads to the So Lauren Rubinstein labeled me that as soon as he saw me thinking differently, and the different type of the way I was thinking, which included putting the headphones on. We'll tell that story, and got the nickname Disco Dick. That my way of thinking is and my perspective is under the name Zokology.
Yeah, I can't wait. So maybe before we go, one sort of short story from the book to get people excited about it. And when's it coming out next year?
May 19th, 2026. ECW Press out of Toronto is publishing it. Tantor Audio is publishing the audio side out of New York, which is very exciting. And so I mean, they're my memoirs, and in addition to the dysfunctional thinking I had, how I lost my card and got it back, and how I lost it, got it back, and got through these peaks and valleys in the 20 years on the PGA Tour. There's stories. I talked to Lee Trevino and Jim Nelford and I, and there's so many practical jokes on Jack Nicklaus at Cypress Point on the 16th hole. And you know, David Frost at Redtail the day after winning at the Canadian Open at Glen Abbey. There's a funny story about him. There's an endless amount of stories in the book.
I can't wait. So May 19th?
May 19th, 2026.
Awesome. Zokology. Can't wait for it. So this has been a wonderful experience. I can't wait for next year. We're going to do this every week. And I hope the listeners enjoy Tough Lies with Richard Zokol and Colin McDougall. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, Colin. That was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Join us next week on the Golfers Podcast with Richard Zokol and Colin McDougall.